because we don't do that just for 7 days. Like that code needs to be run for next 2 years or maybe 5 years or 10 years. So we really need to think about the code quality and also the simplicity, like the way we need to write code, because like people come and go. So like our code might be handled by someone else 2 years down the line.
Welcome, everyone, to the Tech Guide podcast, where we give actual advice to those wanting to break into tech or are looking for their next gig. We have Mayank Jindal on the podcast today to talk about software engineering, master's in computer science, and then just his general story. So, Mayank, thank you so much for being here. We're super excited to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan, for having me on this podcast.
Yes, and before we dive into your background and learning coding and everything, whenever we have software engineers on the channel, I always love to ask the question, think about your life. Is there a specific moment in time where you remember falling in love with technology that comes to mind?
Yeah, so when I started my undergraduate, I didn't have any previous coding background with me. So I took my first programming course in my college in my first semester, and that was the kind of compulsory course to everyone. And there I had struggled a lot, but once I grasped few concepts, uh, I felt kind of in love with like how computers work and how software engineering works. It just like instructing computers to do something, and then they do like without any kind of questions, as long as we have written a specific set of instructions, the way computer expects. So it's just kind of automating the manual task in a more efficient manner. It's kind of intrigued me into computer science and in general software engineering.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool because a lot of people we have on the podcast that are software engineers, they always share like a story like, oh, when I was 7 years old, I started coding. But for you, it was a little bit different in the fact that it was like an undergraduate degree. When you started your undergraduate, that you started to love technology.
Yeah, and like my major was in civil engineering, so like I haven't expected to do any kind of coding at all. So it was kind of a very different experience for me. Like it was
Yeah.
kind of a new exploration. I didn't know that this kind of thing even exists. Like at least for me, it would have existed for me. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, so it's interesting, yeah, because you originally went to college to be a civil engineer, but then you discovered this program in your first semester, and that's when it started to like click of like maybe I want to explore a path in computer or computer engineering.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's super cool. And like, take me to like that class and stuff. Like, what were some of the fundamentals that you learned? And like, I mean, did you get an A on in your first computer software, like computer engineering course, or like what was that? What was that like?
So I got a B grade wise on that course, and like it started with very basic fundamental knowledge. Like the first course or first course assignment was like printing a statement in programming language C, and then
Yeah.
like just basic things like conditional statements, for loop, list, and then it started getting heavy, and like there was pointers, memory management, all kind of things started. But the very basic fundamental knowledge was really crucial. So the thing is that there are so many programming languages and programming frameworks in software engineering and in general computer science, but the fundamentals are same in every language. So like the first 1 or 2 months which where I learned about programming language C and programming, it expanded to other things as well. Like I did web development, I did Android development, I did machine learning. So like the very
Amazing.
basic fundamentals of programming were same in everything. So that was kind of a stepping stone for me.
Yeah, it was understanding those fundamentals because that led to ultimately being able to like work on apps and something like machine learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So did you take courses throughout your undergraduate where like it started to push you to be like, oh, I want to continue to pursue like a degree in this? Or how did you like end up deciding? Because you ended up getting your master's in computer science from the University of Chicago. So take me, let's say an undergraduate, like how did you end up deciding to wanting to get a master's in computer science?
Yeah, so in first semester, I just took that compulsory course, and after that, like there was no compulsory course which I had to take. So
Mm,
my college has many clubs or societies, I would say, and every club has their own web development team. So they
mm,
were recruiting, and I was seeing people who were not from computer science background, even they were like developing their website and apps. So I kind of
wow.
thought to learn computer science on my own, specifically web development. So I took some online courses on Coursera and Udacity, and that was my first time that I was seeing applications of computer science in real world. I learned web development through online courses. Then I applied for web development team at many clubs. So I got selected into one, and that kind of boosted my confidence. So after learning web development, then I thought that, oh, maybe like people are developing apps, maybe I can learn that as well. So I started learning Android development through same online courses. Then I got to know about open source program. So like there are many open source communities which exist, and so I got to learn about Google Summer of Code. So Google Summer of Code is an open source program where participants all over the world can contribute to open source projects.
Yeah.
So I simply went to the Google Summer of Code website and saw the Android app related open source projects. So I tried contributing into a few open source projects, but the one project interested me a lot. So I started contributing in that. So it was my third semester where I started
Yeah.
contributing into open source, and then so I applied for Google Summer of Code in that year, but I didn't get selected. So I kept contributing throughout next year as well. I applied next year, then I got selected into Google Summer of Code. And that was pretty big thing for me because
Yeah.
like when I look back at my journey, like 2 years ago I didn't know anything about programming, and now I was into a selected group of open source contributors. So that was a pretty big thing to me, and I contributed into Google Summer of Code. I did a summer internship in Indiana University, Bloomington,
Hmm.
after my third year, and my first exposure to that was my first exposure to like higher edge, like research background.
Mm.
So I liked that a lot. I thought that maybe I can try into research as well. So I applied into many masters in computer science programs. So I got selected into University of Chicago, and I
Awesome.
kind of thought that yeah, it's masters in computer science, and that program was mainly built for undergraduate majors not having computer science major in undergraduate. So I opted for that program, and then I started my masters in computer science. So I would say it was a mix of all the things like learning web development, learning app development, doing internships. I took some college courses as well, like in machine learning, deep learning. So it was like
Yeah.
mix of everything to me.
Yeah, and so I want to jump back a little bit to that Google Summit because I think that's super cool that you're able to get into a program like this. Can you tell us a little bit more about like the Google Summit?
Mhm. Yeah, so like Google Summer of Code is an online program. It happens every summer. So there are like too many open source organizations which put
Hmm.
their project for Google Summer of Code, and participants can submit proposal for contributing into any project or multiple projects. So what happens is that let's say there is an organization A, and that organization A has their open source code on GitHub or any other open source platform. So throughout the year, or like before starting the Google Summer of Code,
Yeah.
contributors can get an introduction of their code base. They can start by let's say submitting multiple bug requests or resolving any major or minor bugs, so that they can get an introduction of organization's code base, how that works, who are the
Yeah.
reviewers, and like what kind of coding style they expect, pretty much everything. And it helps organizations filtering out the candidates. Like let's say
Mm.
organization get 100 applications for Google Summer of Code. So and they want to select only 10. So they preferably want to select people who have contributed to their code base in the past, because
Mm.
they have like more evidence that okay, this person has contributed to our code base, this
Yep.
person is good, this person is familiar with our code base and technologies and how the review process works. That is one thing I really liked that like Google Summer of Code did for me. um, the other thing I would say is like typically, especially from a non-computer science background, we don't have any formal education in computer science or software engineering. So
Yeah.
by working on real world projects and by getting feedback from people who have contributed to that project, or in general software engineering a lot, helps the candidate as well. I got so many good feedback on my code request, and in general I felt that I was a much better software engineer after 6 months of contributing into open source, compared to what I was before. And it kind of gave me ability to deep dive into a very big large code base and figure out like what is a piece of code I need to change to resolve any bug, and
That's cool.
it yeah, in a non-destructive way, so that anything else doesn't break. So that was really cool for me.
Yeah, that's really, really cool because I feel like that's also just like a launching pad into getting into like Indiana and then also getting into Chicago. I feel like those are just like three like huge milestones in your life. And I do want to talk about Chicago a little bit more as well, just because if someone is considering like a master's degree in computer science, can you kind of cover some of the projects or the coursework that you did at your time with University of Chicago?
So my program in University of Chicago had mix of courses. Like it was having beginner level courses like Python programming, C programming, Java programming.
Yep.
I felt that it was for those people who didn't have any background in programming whatsoever.
Cool.
There were intermediate courses, there were advanced level courses as well. So I took a mix of all the courses. Like, uh, for example, I had pretty good background in Python, so I didn't take Python programming course. Uh, so I took courses like cloud computing, databases, parallel programming,
Yeah.
and there were few courses like which is taught in undergraduate, but I didn't have the exposure of that. So those courses were like operating system, networking. Uh, so I took those system level courses as well. I took few advanced level courses like distributed computing, big data architecture,
Yeah.
yeah, C++ programming, those kind of courses I also took. Yeah. So I think it kind of depend on people to people, like person to person, that like if someone wants to deep dive into any particular area, let's say machine learning or data science, they can choose that course. If someone wants to get into let's say object oriented programming, they can take courses for that as well. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And so then you do your master's at the University of Chicago. You take all these courses, you do great projects. Then, about a year after graduating, you get a job at Amazon as a software developer building software solution to improve ad quality. Congratulations for one. Amazon is an amazing company to work for.
Mhm.
Tough to get into. So, I want to talk about how you got into Amazon. Like, what were some of the ways that they viewed this experience, or what experience did they value the most when you're interviewing with Amazon?
When I interviewed for Amazon, like honestly, my resume had like Google Summer of Code,
Yeah.
my internship in Indiana. I did a summer internship in Goldman Sachs during my
Yep.
master's. So I would say these were the three most like major projects on my resume.
Yep.
So during the interview, like I had pretty basic like basic standard interview like programming and data structure, algorithms, and in terms of project, we deep dive into like what I
Yeah.
did, what were the major challenges we have. I had in those projects. So I talked about that, and there were some leadership principles kind of questions like what would you do if you had disagreement with your teammates? So it was more of like introspecting into previous background and whether I had those kind of instances and how I dealt with that. So these were the things that we had in interview and how I landed those interviews. So it for Amazon, it was a standard student hiring. So I applied for that, and then I got a call
Yeah.
from the student program from the student program team. So yeah, that was the hiring process.
Yeah, I feel like you have to be like so proud of yourself. I mean, you didn't know coding whatever 3 years prior to that, 2 years prior to
Yeah,
that, and all of a sudden you're landing a job with like Amazon. I feel like that's something like you could be super proud of
yeah,
to
yeah,
do.
yeah. So when I look back, like 5 years, it was kind of like unrealistic to me that
Yeah.
yeah, like just landing a job at big tech software company and uh, like from I just looked at like the origin, like where I have come from, and where I have reached, and uh, it was like a dream to me.
That it's a dream for a lot of people to work for in a position like that at a company like Amazon. So yeah, it's definitely something to be proud of. And if there's like one thing someone should take away from like that experience and like understanding like your story and like what you've done, I mean, what's like one thing that you would want people to take away from that?
I would say like you are going to doubt yourself a lot that whether I'm on the
Yeah.
right path or not, and I would say like if you are doubting yourself and you are thinking that it's not good for me, still you are going for it, still you are doing it. I would say like you are on the right track, like just don't doubt yourself. Yeah, and like talk to a lot of people who have come from the previous background. Like when I was
Mm,
applying for my master's degree, I looked on LinkedIn for people who didn't have computer science undergraduate or any strong computer science background. Still they have able to do still they have able to get computer science admission for their masters. So I talked to few of these people, and like it kind of gave sense to me that it's doable, even though
yeah.
it's kind of going out your comfort zone, but still doable for me. So I just took a chance, and it happened to be like good chance for me that I took it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really cool because like so much learning and like growth happens once you do get outside your comfort zone.
Hmm.
And for like some people, like it is reaching out to someone on like LinkedIn that has a similar background to you. But I think that's a really important advice to give is I just love that tactic of like finding people that have similar backgrounds to you. If you are considering a master's degree and reach
Hmm.
out to them, see like what their thoughts are. So yeah, that's amazing advice.
Yeah.
I'd be curious too. I want to talk about so you've had some great experiences already, and you've already moved from an entry level to a mid level engineer within Amazon. What were some of the things that made you like stand out to get this promotion at Amazon as a software engineer? You weren't raised at 10 years old to be a software engineer, but you're getting this promotion. I'd just be curious, like, what is like one thing that like really made you stand out to get it that people can take away?
Like there were few things which I did as a software engineer one, which was like doing code reviews in a much better
Yeah,
way, that reading other people's code and give feedback on that. So what happens is that when we write our code, we had like complete 200% picture of it, like how
yeah,
everything works. But when we read other people code, we kind of face difficulty, like how does this work, and how like what kind of bugs this code can have. So like just reading others people code a lot, and like kind of making a mental picture out of the code, that okay, this is the flow, how this is how it will work. And like if you don't understand anything, asking people around, that was a big thing for me, because I wanted to do everything on my own, and I was
yeah,
facing difficulty at the start. But as soon as I started talking to other people, like asking for their help, asking for their feedback, it like it cut down the processing time for me, and like it made me a much better engineer. So I would say that was the one thing that I did really well, is asking for help. And it seems very basic thing, like anyone can ask for help. But when you are surrounded by like high achievers or much more smarter people than you, then it kind of feel intimidating. Like
Yeah.
it kind of feels that, okay, what if other person thinks that I'm not smart? But
Yeah.
the ability to drop that feeling is that was kind of a like I would say pivotal point for me.
Yeah, it's so scary to do it. Like I remember I when I worked at HubSpot, like this is like a ton of like high achievers, like really ambitious, really smart people. And it's like it can be intimidating to ask questions because it's like you're so good at your job and like I feel so bad at my job, but
Hmm.
you can learn a lot from that and develop that relationship. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's great advice. I want to end up with we're gonna write down the podcast here with the difference between coursework versus like actual work. Because we covered your coursework, a little bit of the projects you've covered. We've covered Amazon. But what are some of the differences between like a project within a company versus like a course you learn online?
So the one big difference I would say is when we do any coursework or when we do any coursework assignment, like we have a feeling that, okay, this is the assignment, the deadline is in next 7 days, we just need to finish it, we need to pass all the test cases and get as much marks as we can. We don't care much about the code quality and the tech that it comes with that. So but when we work at the company, we really own our code. Like if our code is going to have 50 bugs after the launch, we are the
Yeah.
one who are going to fix that. So it's just a different mindset when writing code in a company, because we don't do that just for 7 days. Like that code needs to be run for next 2 years or maybe 5 years or 10 years. So we really need to think about the code quality and also the simplicity, like the way we need to write code, because like people come and go. So like our code might be handled by someone else 2 years down the line. So
Interesting.
we really need to think that, okay, our code need to be understand uh, very well by other person as well. So it doesn't need to be convoluted. And so it's just that, like, writing code in a much better way and in a much more simpler way is very different than what we do at coursework or any college project.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. The tidbit that you make is like in college, of course, like you're just trying to like pass and like get the A. But like when you're actually doing like real work, you're
Hmm.
writing code for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And someone in 5 years might be looking at your code and you make it as simple as possible. So that's a really interesting tidbit you
Hmm.
had. But yeah, we'll wind down with that one. I was curious on that question. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Great episode to talk a little bit more about how you got started with coding, how others can start with coding, your master's program, Amazon, and then the difference between coursework. So thank you so much for being here today. Where can people connect with you and learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan, for having me. It was a really good talk for me as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.